Looks like you have a host.
It looks like it.
Okay.
I think I can. I can make you the host.
No, that's fine. I think that you want to stay host if you've got the slides, so that's fine.
So here is the screen. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'll just leave this over here. I'm going to try. Yep, it will go. Need to turn my phone to silent and turn
Put everything on do not disturb. I think it's notorious for a phone call.
Oh yeah. As soon as the webinar starts, we get a phone call. And yeah, I guess I'll just use my phone as a timer and keep it under control.
I'm sure the content will be riveting as always.
As always, highly. This is being recorded, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we going to have all of the different storage options for the 207, or how's that going to work?
Exactly the same as the 206.
So basically,
we have all the different storage options. The 207 really is the 206 with 2 extra ports. Actually, while we're waiting, I'm going to go on mute and return a call that Hemi had made.
Okay.
So, by the way, Corey, you can hear me fine, right?
Yes.
Good.
We have a couple of folks in.
Yeah, still another 4 minutes to go.
Yep.
That was like bad. That would probably have been more. IBM is such a good, like they're gonna be around for a long time, but they just keep, they just keep doing good. They have good management, they have good structure, they have good mission. Really interesting from that, analyze it. Yeah. They work. It's not that people are old. It's not like some technology, like Wi-Fi, they die. Like there are kids, and everyone knows how to be like, how to serve the. They're really popular. I heard that like, actually, the video.
Okay. Looks like we still have a couple more minutes.
Yes, actually, my calendar just popped up and said 1 more minute.
Okay. Well, would you like to give it a couple more minutes, Tom? Looks like a few people are still trickling in.
Yeah, a minute.
Okay.
We shouldn't penalize those who have already joined.
Bear with us, everybody. We'll get started here in just a few minutes.
Should we start?
Sure, yeah. So, all right, well, thank you everybody for joining us. We will be recording this and posting it, I believe, on our YouTube channel here shortly. So if you miss something or if you have to log off, it will be posted later. But Tom is going to be going over our newest product additions as well as some updates to our software. So if you have any questions along the way, please put them in the chat and we will get to them as best as we can. If I can't get to them in the middle of the presentation, then we will have a question and answer section at the end. But with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Tom.
Very good. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So this presentation is about release 4.4, which is something that is being buttoned up right now and expected to be out pretty soon. So right, so what is release 4.4 all about? There's certainly a whole lot of new hardware that's rolled into it, and I'll go through that. Then there are new features. There's like big and small. We tried to also fold in as many usability improvements and bug fixes as we could. And at the very end, I'll give you a brief preview of what engineering is currently working on, just to give you a taste of what's going to be up in the release after this. Right, without further ado, so as I mentioned, there's a lot of new hardware devices. Here is the first one. We now have a new high-performance gateway. We call it the UG206, and it contains a significantly faster processor inside it than our workhorse UG101 gateway, the white box that people have been deploying. And so this is also a 19-inch one-year rack mount, but it has, well, in addition to being much faster than the UG101, it also has up to 8 terabytes of storage. And so since having 8 terabytes of storage inside of one box is with a single drive is not a great idea. All the higher density storage options are actually RAID 1 SSDs. It does have 2 less ports than the 101, but it more than makes up for that with the higher performance. So we designed this gateway to be able to max out a 1 gig fiber link, and so it in fact can do that, and it can come very close to saturating a fiber link with IDS IPS on. But it does have, I mean, I think I believe it runs at something like 1.6 gigabits per second down both of the WAN links with the regular stateful firewall. In addition, the faster processor gives it much faster Active Directory performance, and the boot time is very quick. You turn this thing on, and within 30 seconds, it's up and running. And that, of course, led to much faster upgrade times and all that. So it's overall a much faster platform than the 101. And that is why we designed it to support up to 200 employees at a single site. We are now working on a variation of this device, which will be available in this coming January, which we call the UG207. We still don't have the front panel artwork completed, but the rest of the hardware is up and running and integrated with our firmware and being tested. This one is also targeted deployments with up to 200 employees per location, but it has 2 10 gigabit Ethernet SFP ports as well as the 6 1 gigabit Ethernet RJ45 ports. And so these two 10 gigabit Ethernet LAN ports are intended for 10 gig fiber or copper uplinks from switches. And so that probably gives you a hint that there's going to be a switch in this lineup that mates up to this gateway. It actually is the same base platform as the 206, and it has the same processor and the same storage options and the same performance. And what it adds is the 10 gig LAN uplinks. And this one will be available in January of 2023, which is basically next month. All right, we have also a high-end gateway. This is actually substantially faster than the 206. It's got a processor that is significantly higher performance than the 206. And we designed it for up to 1,000 employees per site. And so it's already in deployment at places which have a lot of users. I think the last deployment, if I remember right, was a church that had like 400 or so people showing up on the weekends, and they needed something really solid. And so the 208 is in a larger form factor. It has 2 more LAN ports than the 206, and it does have also the same set of storage options, one for 8 terabytes, but it's got way higher performance, and it can actually go beyond a 1 gigabit fiber link. It can, with the standard stateful firewall, it will actually saturate a 2 gig fiber link. So it will be getting ready for all the 2 gig internet connections that people are telling us are coming. All right, on the Wi-Fi side, we introduced a Wi-Fi 6 access point. And this we refer to as the UAP 201, and it's our very first Wi-Fi 6 product. We expect later to have additional Wi-Fi 6 products, but this is the very first in the lot. And so it is a 2x2 MIMO AP, but with Wi-Fi 6, you get significantly higher range and performance. And so we actually verified that on an open air test range, and I was astonished to discover that on the open air test range, we were actually getting like 400 megabits per second out to about 300 feet, which with Wi-Fi 5 was just simply unheard of. And so we have several deployments of this out, and it seems to be performing very well indeed in the field. It is available now. It has been shipping for a month or 2 already. And it uses the same PoE as the regular Wi-Fi 5 APs, and it's also wall and ceiling mountable, just like the regular Wi-Fi 5. We introduced a new smaller switch. If you recall, we have a UG204 Soho gateway. And so that one is very popular with a small office environment or even a home environment. But our smallest switch was the 8-port ULS 101, which is substantially larger than the UG204. So we looked at other switches, or creating another switch that would match up nicely with the 204, and came up with this one, which is a ULS 100. It's a small form factor switch. It's actually less than 1U in the rack mount. So just like the 204 is tiny, this also is tiny. But it has many of the same features as the 101. So it's got SFP ports for uplinks and downlinks. It's got PoE. Though instead of the ULS 101 being 130 watts PoE, this only has 60 watts PoE, but that's still plenty for driving like 4 or 5 access points. And this one is integrated into a firmware, tested, and all that stuff. We're still working on the front panel artwork and stuff, so it will be available in January 2023. And finally, there's another switch that's in our lineup. We refer to this as the ULS 202. which is a 24-port switch with 10 gigabit Ethernet uplink. You remember I mentioned that the gateway with 10 gigabit Ethernet downlinks needed to be matched up to a switch. Well, this is the very first member of our upcoming 10 gigabit Ethernet line of switches. So it has 24 1 gig ports and 4 10 gig SFPs. And so you can put, those are actually SFP pluses, so they will run either at 1 gig or 10 gig. So if you put in the appropriate SFP module, you can get 1 gig optical, 1 gig fiber, 10 gig optical, 10 gig fiber. It's got a hefty switching fabric, and all the RJ45 ports are PoE plus. And so it has exactly the same features as standard up-level switches. You plug it in, it gets discovered, it gets put on the dashboard. It's actually running with our the 4.4 firmware build, and we're completing the again the front panel paintwork, the artwork, and it will be available in 2023 in January actually. All right, so we have a whole set of new hardware devices, gateways, an AP, and switches that are coming out with 4.4. In terms of software features, I think the probably the most significant feature, there's a bunch of software features that are in 4.4, but the one I'd like to point out is the MFA VPN. And so partners have been asking us for MFA capabilities or MFA authentication for a VPN for a while. And it's been a little difficult getting that to happen just because the native VPN clients that we customarily use on Windows or Mac OS and all that, they don't support MFA. And so you have to have a downloadable client. So we finally gave up waiting for Windows and Mac OS and so on to add MFA authentication to that, and built our own MFA client. This MFA client actually is based on the OpenVPN client, which is widely used all over the place, but we wrapped it into an installer and an entire package actually that makes it very easy to install the client. So as I mentioned, this is for things like HIPAA or the various other compliance requirements. A lot of insurers now require that you have MFA authentication, not just for portal login, but also for VPN access. And so it uses time-based token authentication. So that means it'll work with just about any authenticator that you app that you load on your phone or your laptop. And it'll accept time-based tokens from all these apps. There's an installable client, and we figured out how to get rid of those irritating recovery codes or other stuff. So there's no need to remember any of that stuff. Essentially, the QR code is part of the downloadable zip file. So it's a very simple setup, and you can roll it out progressively to your users. So you don't have to move all of your users at one customer to MFA. You can do it on user by user basis progressively. All right, so there has been a bunch of usability improvements in 4.4. So for example, we've added a way to set the static IPs on the gateway from the cloud, so you don't have to use the serial cable. Of course, if the gateway can't connect to the cloud, then you still have to fall back on the serial cable. But if you can connect up in the usual manner with the aux port or using some hotspot or something, then you can set the static IPs that way. We also have added VLAN trunks and being able to map storage to different VLANs. So this has been a very common request across the board. So we listened, responded, and so now you can create multiple VLANs on different ports and so on, and have storage access by multiple from multiple security groups. We've done a lot of work on the IPsec VPNs that we introduced some months ago, and made them more robust, added more features to be allow you to manage them, and added some more features that we found were useful when configuring them. So getting IPsec VPNs easy to use and more robust was a target for 4.4. We did add some stuff to the domain controller. So things around user management, enabling the internal admin account from the portal, and a few other bells and whistles were added in. All of these were really driven from what we observed were the highest needs from partners. And so typically that's the way we add in features, is that we keep our ear to the ground. And if there seems to be a feature that is actually needed, then it goes into release. We did add some more DNS and VoIP choices on request. So for example, you can choose RingCentral and so on. And there's been some diagnostic and security improvements as well, based on things that we see partners using all the time. But there's these are the key ones. There's a whole pile of little things that have been fixed or added or enhanced in the release. There's also been a bunch of bug fixes. All this, of course, will be in the release notes finally, but we fixed some issues we found in managing storage. We had some fairly little problems in things like IP reservations or DCP pools, took care of those. There were issues with name collisions in the domain controller. So it was possible, for example, to name the domain, the user, the group, and a share all with the identical name. And Windows does not like name collisions at all, because it completely screws up its DNS-based domain management. And so while our domain controller didn't care, Windows certainly did. And so there's been changes made to prevent name collisions before they occur. And then there's been some stability improvements for the IPsec VPNs. With some operational experience, we discovered that we could improve and speed up the convergence of IPsec VPN tunnels out of that. Did some stuff with Wi-Fi SSIDs. I think there were cases when if you assigned different SSIDs to different sites and then deleted the entire SSID, then some of them would just stay behind, which obviously was a bug. So fix that. And then some user interface fixes and improvements and things on the firewall side. And then, I mean, there was probably a good 40 or 50 additional bugs that were in our bug database that got fixed in this release. Okay, so that's what's coming up in 4.4. So just to give you a really quick peek into what R&D is working on now, I mentioned that we have the first switch being the 24-port 10 gig switch. Well, of course, we would like to have additional switch options, which we are actually working on. So we need more 10 gig options, not just uplinks, but also aggregation switches. This starts looking much more like the Ethernet switching options I'm used to from my enterprise days, where you have a top of rack 10 gig aggregation switch that is feeding a lot of 10 gig uplinks from 1 gig switches in the rest of the racks. So we are, since we have gateways now that can support more than 100 users, we expect to wind up in situations where the LAN infrastructure also similarly needs to move up. So we're working on switches that will support those LAN topologies. We are also working on a mid-range gateway, essentially, that is in the same category as 101, the white box, but able to saturate a gig fiber link with IDS IPS. I mean, basically a much higher performance mid-range gateway using the new processors that we use in the 206 and 208. So the idea is that we can have a much higher performance of 101. So there's also an increase in the number of 2.5 gig links that we see in APs now. And so it looks like, and switches. So it looks like 2.5 gig is on the horizon. So we're working on a new Soho gateway that would have Also a somewhat faster processor, but also higher speed Ethernet links. Same form factor, just faster performance. Partners have been asking us to set up access to shares from third-party NASs. So to be able to do, for example, backups or copies or mirrors of NASs with the Uplevel storage. And so we're looking into and working on enabling access from these external third-party NASs to the Uplevel storage. And so that so far, the most common request seems to be for rsync access because a very large number of third-party NASs support that. So it's easy to set up and it's easy to implement. And so that's what we're working on now. But of course, in future, we probably will have additional protocols as needed. And there has been a lot of requests for being able to forward the internal logs for APs, switches, gateways, everything to external log servers. And in particular, this is for SIMs to work. And so we're working on that as well. So basically distilling, pruning, and formatting logs so that they can be sent out to external servers. Of course, the thing to keep in mind is that this is all work in progress. There's no due date on set for any of these things yet, but this just gives you a taste of what we're working on and shouldn't be used for saying, well, I'm going to sign up a customer. That would be a really bad idea. Please don't do that. Okay, so given that we have 4.4 being buttoned up at this moment, what is the rollout plan? So we are creating the rollout plan. Normally we would start rolling out pretty much within a week or two of this release webinar, but unfortunately, this being Christmas, we after Thanksgiving, December, so it's after Thanksgiving, before Christmas, before New Year's. Most partners really don't like the notion of turning the customers upside down during this time. So what we plan to do is to start the phased rollout on January 15th after everyone is recovered and is ready to work with us on getting this out into the field. So interesting enough, a lot of these actually are available in the field, interim releases, hot patches, and so on. So 4.4 may not be as much of a big deal as, or rolling out 4.4 may not be as much of a big deal as previous releases would have been. So this more or less wraps together all of the interim releases, hot patches, and makes it and adds in all the new hardware to make it a full-up release. So we are finishing up the QA, and of course, for the new hardware, there's been a bunch of artwork and things for the front panel stuff all getting completed. But basically, all of the stuff that we need for the release is there, and we're completing all the testing. In our usual fashion, we'll be staging out the upgrades so that we can carefully manage the process and not result in a lot of customer disruptions. And so we'll be creating a schedule for the staging of these upgrades and rolling it out on a schedule. So, and we, of course, will coordinate the schedule with partners and make sure that the upgrades will only hit when you expect them to, and you will never be at the receiving end of any unexpected upgrades. So once we have the release plan all worked up and the schedule laid out, then Corey will be getting in touch with you as each batch of upgrades comes up, and we'll give you plenty of notice so that you can tell us to postpone or to reschedule for a different date as you require. Once again, as I said, we never roll out an upgrade unless we are well and truly aware that the partner has been notified and is okay with that. All right. So I think that completes the webinar. I'll turn it back to Corey for questions.
Okay, yeah, so if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat feature and I'll present them to Tom. A couple of questions that have come up in my conversations already with other partners have been, do you have any idea when we'll have release notes ready for this?
That's a very good point. Yes, I've been a little lax about that in the past. So we will have release notes available for this at the same time that the release is buttoned up, which is January 15th. And as some partners have pointed out, release notes need to contain an actual date, and these release notes will contain an actual date on them. So,
okay. And then question came in from Hussein in terms of pricing. Will the pricing be the same? I assume you're referring to the new like 8-port switch and this items like that. But do we have an idea on pricing yet, Tom?
There's been a considerable amount. Well, okay, I'm extremely dangerous and not allowed to discuss anything that has dollars in it, but I can say that we have had discussions on pricing, and some of the pricing actually is already set for things like the 206, the 208, and the Wi-Fi 6 AP, but some of the other ones for which you saw the things like the new 10 gig switch and so on, those are still in discussion, but they'll be pretty consistent with our existing price sheet. So, but Corey is really the one who is the final arbiter of pricing.
Way to put that back on me. And I guess the second part of that would then be, for example, like some of the subscription features, MFA, any of that separate. Will any of those be a separate subscription, or will they just be included in the normal firewall?
Right, the MFA will be included in the normal. There is no subscription stuff. It's become more or less a requirement for cyber insurance. So if you have the client VPN subscription, as soon as 4.4 comes out, then they will all become MFA capable. We won't immediately enable MFA by default, because that would then cause all of your customers to the VPNs to stop working until you set them up with MFA. They'll be MFA capable, so you can at your leisure and convenience turn them on.
Hopefully that answered your question, Hossein. Please feel free to restate it if I missed the point there. Let's see. Do we have any idea on just the time frame for the actual upgrade? How long does it take, and how long will how long can their customers expect to be down? Do we have that kind of information available?
Oh yeah, the upgrades actually. Typically, the way an upgrade works is that we set it up, in coordination with the partner, and then the entire upgrade process is of course automated with manual supervision. We're always looking to make sure nothing is going wrong, but typically an upgrade takes no more than about 15 minutes or so, and the gateway itself goes offline in order to update its flash for probably about 5 minutes, and then after that all the other devices on the LAN will upgrade themselves, and that probably takes a couple of minutes themselves. So the entire process usually puts a customer offline for never more than 15 minutes, but usually more like 5 or 6 minutes. Again, we do this after hours. I don't think I can remember a case in the past few years, unless it was specifically requested by the partner, that we have ever done an upgrade during business hours. It's always nights and weekends.
Will the customer notice any difference when we do the upgrade?
Well, unless there is some kind of yeah, actually an existing customer will of course not notice any difference, because an existing customer will have the exact same feature set as configured by the partner before the upgrade and after the upgrade. So the customer doesn't notice anything except the internet sort of blips off for a few minutes and then comes back on and the gateway is running. We take great care during the upgrade to make sure that the configuration before the upgrade exactly matches the configuration after the upgrade.
Okay. Question from Nick here. I believe there's a bug in a 48 port switch that causes PoE connected APs to periodically report as offline. Have we addressed that?
We are still working on that. We have a workaround from the manufacturer that seems to work to successfully work in about I would say about 75% of the cases. We can get okay. The background to this thing is that there's a process inside the switch. It's a status reporting and controlling process that is apparently sensitive to AC power fluctuations of some kind. The manufacturer is not too clear on exactly what the underlying hardware thing was, but it periodically blips offline. And so at that point, the switch is perfectly functional, traffic flows nicely, everything is, the customer notices nothing at all. What does happen is that we can't pull status out of the switch, and as a consequence, something that's downstream of that switch, we can't pull status on. And then the dashboard just shows that thing as offline. So the manufacturer is working on this problem with us. We've been poking at them for a long time. The reason it's taken a bit of time to sort out is that it is extremely rare and it's extremely random. So it happens like at intervals of sometimes weeks to months. So we have to have a stack of switches that are set up and running for days and weeks before we can even get this thing to happen. And so the manufacturer has given us a workaround that can, like I said, bring that process back to life in about 75% of the cases. So when we do monitor all these switches now, and when it goes offline, that process goes down, we bring it back up without any involvement on the part of the partner. But there is the 25% of the cases where we can't. And unfortunately, that 25% of the cases requires a power cycle of the switch, which we are definitely very unhappy about and have expressed that to the manufacturer repeatedly. But they are working on the problem, we are working on the problem, but in the meantime, we have no recourse. But in, like I said, the small set of cases where it does happen that we can't recover that process using the workaround, then we have no alternative but to request a partner to get that switch power cycled. This only affects, by the way, the 48 port switch. Every other switch is just fine, which is another head scratcher for the vendor and us, the manufacturer and us, because it's the same CPU and the same firmware on the others. Like, what the heck is going on? So that's why they think that this is something to do with the some excessive sensitivity to the power supply, which is what is different between these switches. Anyway, so the short answer is we are working on this. Please bear with us till we get this thing sorted out, but it doesn't affect the customer. What it does affect is the dashboard.
In the number of email alerts I think the partner gets. So.
Yeah, I know. We have some cases where there are like 80 odd access points, and the number of email alerts is beyond belief.
Okay, so I think that's the questions. Nick, if that did you have any other questions? Oh, okay, yeah, just responded. Perfect. Okay, so if there's any additional questions on that, please feel free to let us know. And just clear those off. So wait a minute or so just to see if there's any other questions. In the meantime, as Tom had said, we will be sending out an email blast to everybody as we get a little closer to our update time. We'll give you the date, which we're scheduling you for. So keep an eye out for that. If that date does not work for you, please just contact me and we can schedule another time to do your upgrades. Aside from that, Tom, was there any other thoughts or notes that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, I think this is great. And thank you everyone for joining and for listening.
Okay, make sure there's no last questions, no hands raised. All right, everybody, thank you very much for attending. And we will be putting this up within a week or so, probably on our YouTube channel. So if you missed anything or if you want to review it, it will be there. And then I think the release notes will be available as well, hopefully by that time. So thanks very much for your time and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all.